I was taking care of the roses that morning. My garden had always been my haven, and I was totally unaware of what life had in store for me. My hands were buried in the dirt, checking the roots of the saplings I had just planted. Everything was calm and normal like any other day until a sharp pain shot through my back. I had no idea what was going to happen, especially since my nephew Taylor was there by chance. It was the one location that genuinely healed my spirit when my husband Grant went away. But that day, everything felt different. I was 57 years old, but people would frequently ask me how I managed to look so young for my age. To be honest, there was no big secret. I just took care of myself with a healthy diet, regular exercise, and a resolve to never lose the young woman inside of me. However, I'll admit that loneliness had sunk deep into my soul, even though my beauty may have still drawn attention. There was an emptiness inside that I couldn't shake. As I was positioning one of the saplings, felt a sudden pain in my back. It was so sudden and unexpected that I dropped everything I was holding for a moment. I closed my eyes in an attempt to breathe through the pain, but it didn't help. The itchy spread from my shoulder down my back, leaving me immobile. Then I heard Taylor's voice. "Nora, are you okay?" Managed to say something's wrong, pointing to the area where the pain was the worst. My step-nephew Taylor, 22, had broad shoulders, a muscular build, and the kind of face you'd see on a magazine cover. His blonde hair shimmered in the sunlight, and his piercing eyes were fixed on me with concern. He had a natural charm that attracted everyone's attention, even though he didn't seem to notice it himself. "I am unable to move. Are you prepared for this? Because this is a journey, not simply a narrative. Whether this seems like your sort of narrative, every moment might test the boundaries of what you thought you understood. When boundaries are blurred, emotions get entangled, and admissions linger like silent cries. Remember to support me by subscribing to my channel and turning on alerts." Taylor knelt next to me and murmured, "Let me help," as his large hands stroked my shoulders. "It typically helps him. I'll give you a massage." I felt an uncontrollable chill go through me. I stated that I was eager to do anything to stop the agony since I lacked the power to object. But what truly surprised me was the impact of his touch. Taylor put his hands on my back and started applying little pressure. I must admit that I hadn't experienced this level of intimacy in years. His fingers were powerful, yet surprisingly soft as they moved over my tense muscles, and as the pain gradually subsided, a strange warmth began to spread throughout me. It was as though the lonely woman inside of me had been awakened, and I exhaled a breath that was little too deep. Perhaps Taylor and I began to speak, but I was unable to continue because the words became stuck in my throat. He remained silent. Taylor continued to massage my back steadily and deliberately until he abruptly stopped and leaned closer to look at me. "Nora, this is really bad," he said in a serious and worried voice. "We can't fix this out here in the garden, so let me get you to put the fireplace inside. The warmth will help and I'll grab some." He continued to massage my back in a way that made me hyper-aware of every touch. In that moment I felt something shifting, and it scared and excited me in ways I wasn't prepared for. "We need to take care of this. Apply some lotion to your back." When we entered the room, the crackling fire filled the room with a warm golden glow, and the heat instantly relieved some of the tension in my body. I hesitated for a moment, but the pain convinced me to do so. So I nodded, and he helped me to stand carefully and take it slow. He said that his strong hand was supporting me, and there was something strangely comforting about how he held me in a closeness I hadn't felt in years. Taylor quickly spread a blanket on the floor. "And just Ed, for me to lie down, you need to stretch out your back in a more comfortable position. I've got some cream." He continued, his eyes earnest yet a little hesitant. "It will assist in releasing those muscles. Lay down." Feeling the fire's warmth seep into me as Taylor rubbed the cream between his hands, tore it up. The first touch of his hand on my shoulders made me let out a breath. I didn't even realize I'd been holding. Just relax, he said softly. You'll feel better in no time. But every touch of his hands was doing more than just easing my physical pain. It was stirring something inside me, something I thought I'd buried a long time ago. As his fingers moved down my back, my thoughts became both clearer and more the message was chaotic. Taylor's touch wasn't just healing, it was awakening. For a moment, I hesitated inside, but the pain was too much, so I quickly accepted. Taylor gently grabbed my arm and helped me to my feet. Take it slow, be careful, he said when his strong hands almost completely wrapped around me. I felt an odd sense of security. This young guy's protectiveness gave me a closeness I hadn't felt in years when we entered the house. The flames in the fireplace painted the room in a warm orange glow. The crackling of the fire and the heat that filled the room instantly relaxed me. Taylor quickly spread a blanket on the floor and motioned for me to lie down. Need to loosen your back in a more comfortable position. He said, his eyes still serious, but flickering with something softer. I brought some cream too. This will soften those muscles. I lay down, feeling the warmth wrap around my body, and Taylor squeezed the cream into his hand, rubbing it between his palms to warm it up the first time. Touch of his hands on my shoulder made me involuntarily. Take a breath, calm down, he whispered. You feel better now, but every time he touched me, I sensed something was shifting. His hands weren't just relieving my physical pain, they were also reviving emotions that I had suppressed for years as his fingers moved over my back. My thoughts were calm, but also confused. Taylor's touch was slow, but sure, going deeper in both physical and emotional ways. It's no wonder your muscles are so tight, he said, drawing my attention to the warmth in his voice. You're taking on too much. Nora, you need to think about yourself too. He made an effort to clarify my treatment, Taylor. The gardener halted his touch. Without my knowledge, your remarks, madame, feel even more comfortable than the fire. But they also made me uncomfortable. You need more than just the garden, you need someone who cares about you. I didn't want to believe that I didn't really grasp what he meant, or perhaps it did, Taylor. I eventually murmured in a trembling voice. It felt both comforting and frightening to be this close to him. His hand slid slightly lower on my back. At that point, continuing the massage, the warmth of his touch released the tight regions, but within it was building a new type of knot. You're really helping. But I know he spoke more slowly this time. But don't worry, everything will work out like the flames of the fire. Nora Eisen said that his words went beyond simple guidance. His presence was getting close, every second. And as Taylor's hands moved slowly but steadily down my back, releasing each muscle, I started to feel uneasy. His warmth moved deeper, slower, but determined, and at that moment my mind began to cloud, and an internal struggle began. Nora, stay calm, I told myself, but I couldn't seem to control it. As his warm hands moved lower, closer to me, shoulders, my heart started pounding. On one side, it was Taylor's proximity, and on the other, the boundaries that years had set in place. Suddenly, the voice inside me, screamed loudly. Hey, your step. Nephew, Nora, you shouldn't be doing this. The fireplace had filled the whole room with a warm light. But after a while, that heat became unbearable. When I saw, Taylor wiped the sweat from his forehead. My eyes couldn't help but drift to him. Suddenly he pulled up the bottom of his shirt, lifting it off his muscular, sun-kissed body that practically glowed in the fur light, almost like a sculpture. It's hard to explain what I felt in that moment. I hadn't felt this close to anyone in years. This heat from the fire is too much, he said. Dropping his shirt to the floor, his tone was casual, but the depth in his gaze left me frozen. Then his eyes met mine. Nora, you're getting really hot too, he said, his voice soft but firm. Keeping that garment will make you feel worse. Let me assist you. My words became stuck in my throat. I considered, pulling back, But the heat in the room and the W on my skin had been intolerable, so I nodded slowly. Taylor got down on his knees close to me and grabbed my shirt's hem. He gently pushed my shirt up, and I could feel his warm hands on my flesh. The contact made me shiver, yet it wasn't chilly. The air between us thickened as he worked it gently around my hair before removing it and setting it aside. His eyes lingered on me for a moment, before swiftly turning his head away. But I didn't need to see his face to understand the chaos those looks caused inside of me. Nora Taylor said, "Do you feel better?" in a deeper voice than before now? I believe. So I said in a voice I couldn't conceal, the tempest inside of me, by cracking my words. It wasn't just the heat, it was the warmth of Taylor's presence that surrounded me. "Come on," he murmured, holding out his hand. "Let and go sit on the couch." When we reached the couch, Taylor's protective nature felt so obvious and natural that the fears inside of me started to melt away. He kissed me gently and sat next to me right away, but he made sure there was enough space between. Even so, the tension in the room hadn't gone anywhere. I took his hand. The moment our fingers touched, and I felt an electricity I hadn't felt in years, as he helped me to my feet with his strong arms, keeping me steady for a moment. One thing was evident tonight as we sat down, in quiet. It was nearly impossible to deny the weight of our sentiments. However, it was extremely difficult, if not impossible, to put it into words while attempting to avoid losing myself. The depth of his stare deepened with the crackling of the fire. My heart was beating so fast in my chest I could almost hear it. Taylor sitting next to me. His presence, his breath even was affecting me. Being this close to him made me feel both nervous and strangely at peace. I turned my head for a moment, and our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper in that closeness. It was impossible to ignore the look in his eyes, deep, intense, but also soft. The world seemed to pause in that moment. Taylor slowly reached his hand out to mine. When his fingers touched mine, a shiver ran through me. He wasn't saying anything, but there was so much in the silence. His gaze lingered on my lips, and a shiver ran through me. He wasn't saying anything, but there was so much in the silence. His gaze lingered on my lips for a second, and in that moment, everything changed. He leaned toward me slowly. He was so close. His gaze lingered on my lips for a second, and in that moment, everything changed. He leaned toward me slowly. He was so close, his breath leaving a warmth on my skin. The voices inside me stopped. There was no right or wrong anymore. In that moment, there were only Taylor's eyes and his closeness. Tome. I closed my eyes and leaned in just a little toward him. When our lips met, it felt like time had passed. The first touch was gentle and soft and inquisitive, but in a matter of seconds, that tenderness transformed into something more powerful. His warmth, his breath, the feel of his lips. Everything seemed connected to reality by the loneliness, fear, and longing that had accumulated inside of me in that instant. I somehow merged with him. His hands moved gently over my cheeks as the kiss deepened, and my hands instinctively gripped his shoulders, radiating the warmth of his skin through my palms. So eventually we both pulled away at the same moment, our breaths uneven, but the bond between us felt stronger than ever. This was more than just a kiss. It was the expression of years of bottled-up emotions, suppressed desires, and perhaps even a hidden bond. I realized that I was experiencing breathlessness, my heart pounding as if it were about to burst. This occurred following the kiss. When I looked into Taylor's eyes, I saw a question and a deep desire. My mind went completely silent, and I knew that my body and heart were making the decisions. I said shakily, but clearly, "Yes, I want you." Everything between us would never be the same tonight. Taylor's face briefly flashed with surprise, but then a slow smile spread across his face, and the expression in his eyes mirrored the warmth surrounding me. "I want you too." "Nora," he said, his voice both soft and firm. "I've been trying to hold back, but I can't anymore. I want you," he said. Something inside me snapped the loneliness and fears I carried for years, but seemed to melt away in an instant. "I desire you," he said. "I want to be with you." Through me like waves every word, touching my heart. Taylor gently cued my face in his hands and moved closer. Tome once more. This time there was no hesitation. We both knew exactly what we wanted when his lips met mine. The intensity of our emotions went beyond words. This moment was a turning point. For me, Taylor's presence, his warmth. In his words, despite all my fears. I wasn't planning to stop anything now. I hadn't stopped anything. I had completely let myself go with the flow of my feelings, now with nothing but a thin sheet over us, breathless. And tangled up in each other's, Taylor was lying next to me with a small smile on my face. I looked up at the ceiling and noticed our shirts and pants scattered on the floor of the night. Felt so surreal it was like a dream. Taylor turned to face me, that captivating smile still on his face. His hand gently touched my cheek with his thumb briefly grazing my lips. Nora said, his voice was deep and soft. "I wouldn't trade this moment for anything." I turned to him, filled with the mixed emotions still running through me, and said in a voice full of gratitude, "Thank you. Taylor, I haven't felt this lonely in a long time, but you being this big, young, and handsome, I really like." I had no intention of hiding the sincerity and thankfulness in my eyes. Taylor's lips curled upward and his signature charming smile spreading across his face. "Nora, do you know how beautiful you are?" he said, "and I'm not talking about your appearance with you. It's a very different experience. Your genuineness, friendliness, and everything else you do. Improve my self-esteem. I needed you, Taylor." His words and touch were so vivid and powerful that I wanted to permanently mark this night. In my memory, I couldn't take my eyes off of them, to be honest. You couldn't. If you were here, I'll be coming here a lot. Nora, from now on. Whenever you need me, I'll be here. Taylor said, grinning a little as he ran, his fingers over the edge of the sheets. I hope you enjoyed my story. It was an exciting journey, and I'm so happy to share it with you. If you want to hear more stories like this, he said, his voice full of determination and sincerity. Just to see you. Just to give you the moments in that moment, I felt like a new door was opening in my life. The burdens and loneliness of the past were slowly fading behind me, and having Taylor by my side filled me with a deep sense of trust and peace. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and moved a little closer to his warmth.